Well, hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday, and welcome into GC Live here on Gamecock Central. Kendall Smith and Jack Veltri coming at you live here, and we are excited, Jack, about this weekend. The bye week is gone. No more having to wait for South Carolina football. It is back. It is here. The Gamecocks taking on Texas A&M at home this weekend under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium. A 7:30 kickoff. It should be a good one. A little scary, though, playing Texas A&M, I'm not going to lie. So we will get into all of that as the show progresses. We'll talk a little bit about what the coordinators had to say here today. But the first question that we have to start with, Jack, how was Disney World? You went to Disney World for your
It was unbelievable. It was girlfriend and I, Caroline, we spent three days at the parks. So we did Hollywood Studios all day on Friday. Got to implement breaks at this point. Like, yeah, we're only like 24, and she's turning 24 here tomorrow. But we're not that old. But like, it's like you got to have these breaks during the day because it's a long, long day. And then Magic Kingdom on Saturday was awesome. They had it all Halloween themed out and stuff, so that was really cool. And then Sunday, the plan was to go to Animal Kingdom first, and then over to Epcot for the rest of the day because Caroline really likes Lion King. So we were going to do the Lion King show or whatever, and then go over to Epcot. Then we decided, you know what? We've already done two parks. Let's do the other two because we needed to finish off doing some other things at these other parks, and we wanted to, spend, get the most out of our day. So we did all four parks in one day, which I've never done before. It was no breaks during the day. It was insane, but you know what? We did it. And then we flew out at 5 a.m. on Monday, which was awful. Yeah, she's a teacher. So,
she had to teach.
What's that? Yeah.
She had to teach on Monday, so she flew back and then taught.
And here's the annoying part, and I don't blame her necessarily. She ended up calling out sick on when we landed. So I was like, so we could have flown back later in the day, is what I'm hearing. But you know what? It is what it is. It's taken a day or two for my body to like just get back in the mindset of work and recover and all that. I mean, I slept for hours after I got back. But you know what? We're here, we're alive, and we're ready to talk some Gamecock football. But I will ask, how are you doing? Because I just talked about hockey before we got going here, but it seems like things are going well for you. And anything else fun going on?
Yeah, everything is going great. Thanks for asking. Hockey is going super well. My team that I work for, the Charlotte Checkers, they are the AHL affiliate of the Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers. They're doing great so far. 50% efficiency on the power play this past weekend, 7 for 14. So we will take it. I have worked every day for like the last 14 days or something like that. I don't know. We're grinding through it. I was the same way in college. So anyone who has known me or followed me since I started at GC, I am still the same way post-grad. So we're grinding it out. We're moving along. It's going great. And I'm super happy. Hockey is back in full swing. I'm sure we'll do our Yankees update with you once we talk about PrizePicks. But we do want to talk about Clint Hammond because he is the reason for this GC Live show. Right, Jack?
That's right. Yeah. So if you are currently, let's say you're looking for a home and you're at an apartment right now and you're looking to take that next step moving forward in your life and you want to get a home, well, you don't know where to start, go ahead and give our guy Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans a call. He'll be able to help you out and take you through every step you need to get to buying a home. So Clint has been in the mortgage industry for a very long time. He's been a long-time supporter of all of our Gamecock Central Live programs. And the best part is he's a Gamecock fan, so he gets it. He goes through the grind of being a South Carolina fan from start to finish, just like everyone else here. And he can also help you buy a home and help you with your mortgage or anything like that. So give our guy Clint a call at 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to ClintHammond.com. It'll be right above us all show long and then on all of our GC Live programs. So I want to thank Clint for being a wonderful sponsor of Gamecock Central.
Yeah, huge shout out to Clint. We really appreciate all that he does for Gamecock Central. And speaking of the Gamecocks, Jack, we heard from the coordinators here today, and we are going to deep dive into what they had to say. Dowell, Loggains, and Clayton White talking all about this matchup coming up this weekend between South Carolina and Texas A&M. Let's start it off as usual, very broad, and then let's dial in on the important subjects that they hit on. But what were the things that stood out to you with these two and what they said today, Jack?
Yeah, so obviously we hadn't heard from them in a little bit because the bye week, and the last time we'd really heard from them was before the Oklahoma game. So a lot to talk about here. Obviously, the defense has been playing phenomenal, so a lot of good to talk about with Clayton White on that. And then obviously offense. A lot of people are probably thinking like the offense struggled a lot in the Oklahoma game, and you wouldn't necessarily be wrong by any means. But at the same time, it's like, think about the situation. You're up 21-0, and you got a lot of good plays by your defense. And so with an offense like Oklahoma that struggles to score, you didn't really need to bring out all the tricks and gadgets or anything. You could get by just playing a simple brand of football and being a little bit conservative. So obviously for Dowell, I mean, he kind of said he felt frustrated for the team when you feel like you lose your edge, is what he really said, when you're up 21-0. There's a lack of the intensity is not the exact same as it was at the start of the game, right? So because you don't need to do everything that you normally would when you're up by that many points. I mean, you don't have to play from behind or anything. You don't have to dial it up. You can keep it simple and get the job done, and that's exactly what happened. But the main thing that he was, while he was frustrated about losing a little bit of intensity in that game, he was happy with the fact that Lenore Sellers was able to take care of the football, right? No turnovers in that game, as we know. And that's the big thing. If you're going to beat Oklahoma, a team that is very good defensively, that forces a lot of turnovers, you have to win the turnover battle. And of course, they definitely did in that game by a wide margin. And that's why you saw the game ended up being 35-9 in favor of the Gamecocks. So, look, that is a great sign that you're able to take care of the football. You obviously need to figure it out a little bit more offensively. But when you are able to win the turnover battle and you're not giving the other team chances to take advantage of mistakes that maybe you made, self-inflicted speaking, I think it leads to a lot of success. Now, as for Clayton White, obviously this defense has been playing out of their minds. Obviously, a lot to talk about there. I will say the main talking point kind of this week with the defense isn't even necessarily about the defense itself, but more so like with A&M. We'll talk about A&M here throughout the show. They got a little bit of a quarterback thing going on right now, right? They don't have a solidified starter right now. You could either go with Marcel Reed or Connor Wegman this weekend, and it's going to be really up in the air to see what happens. The speculation seems to be that Marcel Reed will be starting this game, as he played a good bit against LSU over the weekend, in which that was a massive home win for the Aggies at Kyle Field. But there's a little bit of, I don't even know if it's trouble, but it gives you more on your plate to prepare for the fact that you don't know who exactly is going to start. So Clayton's been saying that they have the idea that they're going to be seeing both quarterbacks in this game. They're preparing for both, and the thing that helps is that they've been able to get so many different looks from guys like Sellers and Robbie Ashford because of their dual threat capabilities. So that definitely helps. And look, they need to be ready for this game, but at the same time, they've faced all these different quarterbacks throughout the season. Jalen Milroe, Garrett Nussmeier. They've faced their share of quarterbacks that aren't just a one-trick pony. Nussmeier, gunslinger, Milroe, good passer, not in the South Carolina game necessarily, but a really good runner. So you know what you're getting out of what you've faced so far this year, and it definitely helps because they've already faced. If it's Marcel Reed starting, that's more of a run-first quarterback, right? He can definitely throw it a little bit, but he's going to be more of that option type quarterback that comes in there. You have to defend that. So they faced that already in Milroe. And now with Wegman, he's more of a passing quarterback from my understanding. And he's faced South Carolina a bit in the past. Obviously, you go back to 2 years ago. He didn't start the game, but he finished it when Haynes King came out. And then just, you're going to get a little bit more of a passing quarterback in that sense. So overall, that's kind of what I took away. A lot to break down, obviously. But I think from a defensive standpoint, they got to be ready for both quarterbacks. That's pretty much what I took away. And then offensively, look, are they happy with where things are on offense? No. But you know what? They're winning games, and they're not turning the ball over right now, which is definitely a good bit to ask for.
Well, a lot to get into from all of that, and they certainly had some notable quotes that we will chat about throughout this show. But I want to start on defense. Usually we start talking about the offense and what Dowell Loggains said, but something that you touched on there that Clayton White mentioned was that last week during the bye, South Carolina was on a relentless pursuit to improvement. And he said the guys were super locked in. And we've talked about how good this defense has been over the last few weeks, specifically against Oklahoma. Absolutely fantastic. So when you hear the word improvement, it kind of comes to your head of like, well, what is it that they need to improve on? You just need to keep replicating what you've been doing. If you're South Carolina's defense and the great job that you did at Oklahoma, you want to see more of that this weekend against Texas A&M. So when he says that, what do you think he's specifically talking about in terms of improvement with this defense? Obviously, besides seeing potentially 2 quarterbacks this weekend.
Yeah. So he didn't really like dive too much into specifics because it was kind of like his opening statement or whatever. But look, I think in terms of improvement, you probably want to see South Carolina. I mean, obviously, look, in these games, they're going to give up a big play from time to time, and you want to limit those as best as possible. So that would probably be my best guess is that's something that they need to improve upon. But it's also continuing to play well for 4 quarters. We saw that for the most part last time out against Oklahoma. And kind of going back to the big plays they gave up a few against Oklahoma, one of them being a touchdown. But like other than that, it really wasn't all too bad. Like I think South Carolina did a great job defensively in that game. Obviously, when you get up only 9 points and you force a million sacks and TFLs and you're forcing fumbles and interceptions and having all those great things, it doesn't seem like there's much better to improve on. But look, you're going to be facing a team this weekend that likes to run the football a lot. A&M's rushed for almost 2,000 yards as a team this season, and a lot of that has to do with Marcel Reed, but you also got Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels. So you have some guys in there that can definitely run the football effectively. At the same time, though, if you are able to slow down the run in this game, what does that mean for the passing game for A&M, right? Because, look, Marcel Reed, he had the one big pass play against LSU that was a success, but otherwise, he's an average passer, in my opinion. And maybe I'm wrong on that. But I think when you are facing a guy like this, you got to be ready for the run. And I think that's something that they're preparing for this week. Shane Beamer talked about it in his press conference yesterday. And look, that is definitely the main talking point from this week. But overall, I mean, look, outside of that, with evaluation of the defense, it's just an ongoing process for them. And, one of the main things they wanted to get in the building for this season on defense was speed. And they definitely have that. Look at the edge rushers they have coming out. Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart. Look how quick they get to the quarterback. Look how all these guys fly around. So I think those are the main things with this defense that maybe they're not struggling in right now, but they're definitely continuing to improve upon. They're only getting better from here, it seems like. They just played their best game, arguably, of the season 2 weeks ago, and it's going to be a really tough challenge against A&M, undefeated in SEC play, but they're coming to Willie B. Like, under the lights, we know how it is. Last time they had a game like this under the lights and SEC play was, Kentucky last year, and they won that game, and then obviously against a ranked team, I think it was Tennessee. So a lot to be excited about for this game for South Carolina. And if your defense steps up to the task like they have been, it really can be anyone's ball game, in my opinion.
Well, the last time that Texas A&M came to South Carolina under the lights, things fared pretty well for the Gamecocks. You remember that, Jack, our senior year of college just a couple of years back. So hopefully some of that replicated this upcoming weekend with South Carolina. Wes Mitchell and I just did a recruiting rundown, shameless plug. That will go out later in the week. We're talking about all of the guys that are coming this weekend on official visits, unofficial visits, in-state guys that are coming to visit South Carolina this weekend. So a lot rides on this game, not only for what happens on the field, because if you're South Carolina and you want to go to a bowl game this season, you have to finish this year strong, but also a lot riding on impressing these recruits and continuing to build and continuing to grow this program. But something that Dowell Loggains said that really stood out to me was that he doesn't think anyone has really been able to figure out Texas A&M. He said you need to maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. Him saying that people haven't really been able to figure out the Aggies, does that concern you a little bit? Do you think South Carolina could be that team?
Well, here's the thing with A&M, that history speaking, and again, it might not even apply to this year, but if history proves anything, at least from my knowledge, A&M has been in positions like this before where they've been really good. Like obviously 2012, their first year in the SEC, they were solid with Johnny Manziel and had a great year that ended with a Cotton Bowl win, if I remember correctly. But there's been other times where A&M's had the opportunity to come through and take that next step forward, but they've never been able to, in my opinion. Like they've had their moments, but this is a different spotlight for them, right? Because they're the top dog in the SEC record-wise. They're the only unbeaten team left in conference play. I don't think they've ever really been in a spot like this where they're that team. Like there's no Alabama at the top right now. They just beat LSU, obviously. So LSU's not in the mix to be that top team in the SEC. And even Georgia. You would think Georgia, Texas, teams like that are at the top of the league. But right now, it's the Texas A&M Aggies, and they're playing their best football. So my point is, how is A&M going to handle this? It's obviously a different regime with Mike Elko and stuff. It's not your days of Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher anymore. Like maybe this is just a different team and a different type of built program. But if history does show anything, A&M has always endured a few bumps in the road. So far this year, they really haven't. Notre Dame was the only team to really figure them out, but even then, that's a week one game, and who knows? That's a completely different team compared to now, in my opinion. And a lot has changed. So right now, A&M's playing at their best. There's not many weaknesses, like you said. I mean, they're running the football really effectively. They just came off a game where they ran for nearly 250 yards, and they had 5 touchdowns. So that is going to be something to keep an eye on if South Carolina could stop the run in this game. But from a receiving and passing standpoint, I think that's where you can beat A&M, is the fact that if you have to make them throw, I like South Carolina's chances out there in coverage. We've seen them be able to handle some of the top receivers like Juice Wells and Ryan Williams and guys like that. But can they do it against this team, and can they stop the run, I think, is the big question. And even defensively, A&M's a very good team. Like overall, from top to bottom, no matter how you look at it, they are a very good team. But like we talked about before, this is a team that is coming off a massive home win over a top 10 team. Is there going to be some effect of like a hangover or anything? Is this a trap game because it's at night? It's at Willie B. A&M obviously lost the last time they came here. I don't even think that's relevant right now. But at the same time, there's something about Willie B. There's something to be said about South Carolina having 2 weeks off. And you better hope that South Carolina comes out and plays a lot better in this football game compared to the last time they came off a bye week. And if they show any progress of looking like the team that they were against Oklahoma, especially from a defensive standpoint, like I said, you got to really like their chances. And there's just a lot of questions about A&M and how they're going to handle being that top team in the SEC right now.
Well, speaking of a lot of questions, I'm sure a lot of fans have questions about what went on during the bye week for South Carolina. And you hear words like looking to make improvements and growing and getting better. But I think people really want the specifics of what was South Carolina doing during the bye week to get better. They obviously had a great outing at Oklahoma. You're coming off of that. You've got some momentum heading into this Texas A&M game, but we will say it once and then we'll say it a million times after that. This is not going to be an easy game for South Carolina. Yes, you have the home field advantage. Yes, it's under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium. Yeah, you might even be able to say for a second that Texas A&M might come into this game after beating LSU and might be lagging a little bit and kind of see this as a potential trap game. I mean, I'm sure that those are thoughts going through people's heads, but I think people do have questions. What did the Gamecocks specifically do this bye week to improve themselves for Texas A&M? What do you think it is, Jack?
Yeah, and just based on what the players had to say and the coaches and stuff, it really did seem like the bye week was just about as normal as possible for South Carolina. Obviously, they're looking for things to improve upon, right? That's always the case. But Dowell Loggains had a good point today that, you're trying to figure out things to improve upon to give them a better chance to win, obviously, right? But at the same time, there's no easy fix for the offense during the bye week. Like, yeah, you can do everything you can, but it doesn't mean that you're going to see immediate results. Like, people want to snap their fingers and see his offense go from struggling to being the top team in all of college football on offense. That's just not realistic. And I think for South Carolina, they are figuring out where can they improve. And You don't want to give too much on the plate of like a Lenore Sellers or Rocket Sanders, anyone on that offense. But you find a few things and you go from there and try to improve. So that's kind of what I took away from what Dowell had to say about the improvements made or what they kind of did during the bye week. They're also trying to figure out, okay, who are the repeat offenders on, let's say, the sacks, for instance, or the penalties? Do you need to, he even brought up, like, do you need to look at like a roster change? Do you try to do something different in terms of maybe who starts? Those things are all up for debate. But then again, you're doing this in a 3-day window because South Carolina had off a few days. I mean, the coaches were out recruiting during the week, but you're also giving the players off, Thursday to Saturday, and then they're back on Sunday. So there's not a ton of time necessarily to go out here and go through a normal week of practice and try to make all these changes. At the same time, you're self-scouting yourself. You're looking ahead to the next opponent and preparing for them. And then for the coaches, they're also recruiting. So there's a lot of different layers to this. But from what the players also had to say, they for the most part kept everything the same. They have momentum right now. It's been a few weeks since they played, and that kind of seemed to frustrate them a little bit, is that they had such a great game against Oklahoma, and then they had to go into a bye week. But I feel like for them, they feel really good about where they're at right now. 4-3, 5 games to go. Everything's still out in front of them. They just have to continue to play their brand of football, which means solid defense and being able to really move the football effectively by running it and then having Sellers be able to throw consistently. So look, I'm not sure exactly what they really worked on, like nitty-gritty details of like what drills did they do in practice and stuff. But obviously they're trying to find ways to improve, and that's number one for sure.
Yeah, the goal, I would imagine, for South Carolina is to play this game the way that they want to play this game and take control of this game. And that's something that they did against Oklahoma and were very successful with right off of the bat. And I feel like each and every week we talk about it, whether it's you and me, whether it's me and Wes, we're talking about those fast starts for South Carolina. And that's what we saw in the game against Oklahoma. It's getting off to a really good start, maintaining that momentum, keeping your composure, and allowing it to stay throughout the entirety of the game. And we really saw that from start to finish against Oklahoma. So you're hoping that that transfers into this week. But obviously you have some of those fears of the last time South Carolina came off of a bye week just a few weeks ago. It was against Ole Miss, and it was their worst game of the season, without a doubt, the worst game of the season for South Carolina. So I think there are some lingering fears still about that, but obviously a chance for South Carolina to go out there and get things done this weekend against Texas A&M. It would be a massive statement win for the Gamecocks if they were able to get this one done. But as we get to about the halfway point in the show here today, Jack, we've got another sponsor that we want to give a shout out to.
Yeah, so let's talk about our good friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And then, of course, you watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. I've used PrizePicks plenty in the past before, as I've mentioned on every time we talk about this sponsor. Obviously, a lot going on right now. You got the World Series going on, as Kendall alluded to earlier, with the Yankees and Dodgers. NFL is going on. NBA just started recently. Hockey, college football. So many different opportunities to get involved in the game. It is the best way to have some fun and watch the winnings roll in, like PrizePicks says. So just go to PrizePicks.com or download the PrizePicks app. Use the code on screen, GC, that stands for Gamecock Central, to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. So we want to thank PrizePicks for being a wonderful sponsor of all of our GC Live programs.
This is probably going to be our last one, Jack, but we're checking in on how you are feeling. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's actually fine because the Yankees won
right now. Shout out to Volpe, though.
Oh,
I mean, what a moment. I love that picture of him and Derek Jeter. That is like my favorite picture of the week. That is amazing.
It's so cool. Look, the series for me has obviously been kind of tough, right? Because the Yankees fell behind 3-0. They had the really rough loss in game 1. And yes, I did watch. While I was at the most magical place on earth, my heart was definitely feeling awful after Freddie Freeman hit the walk-off grand slam. But alas, this team has fight. They won game 4, 11-4. And like you said, Anthony Volpe hit the grand slam that kind of got things going. And that picture of him and Jeter after the game was really, really cool. And it's cool to see stuff like that happen. Now, are they going to win tonight? I got no clue. Like, Garrett Cole's on the mound. I'm feeling good about them. I think they're going to send this series back to LA. The offense seems to have woken up a little bit. But we're going to have to see. The Dodgers, they're going to have the best arms out there tonight. So it wouldn't shock me if the Yankees won this game, but it also wouldn't shock me if the Dodgers close this thing out. But we'll see what happens. It should be a very, once again, like every game this postseason, a very stressful night.
Who's winning tonight, everybody? Let us know in the comments, Yankees or Dodgers. I hope the Yankees win because I would like to see baseball continue. I'm not quite ready for baseball to be done yet. I do really like Freddie Freeman, though. Like, I just think he's a great guy. His story is absolutely incredible. Like, it really, really pulls at your heartstrings. So to see him do what he did in game 1 and just how amazing he has been from a long ball standpoint has been incredible. So massive shout out to him. And I know all Atlanta Braves fans out there, including Michael Sauls, a former Gamecock Central staff member, are probably very sad that Freddie Freeman is no longer an Atlanta Brave. But what a guy, incredible story, great guy. Huge shout out to Anthony Volpe as well. I know this is a Gamecock podcast, but how cool is that? A guy that grew up in that area, was a Yankees fan.
So cool.
His dream was to be a New York Yankee. And then he comes in clutch, game 4 of the World Series, allows the Yankees to continue in this series and hits a grand slam, and then gets his picture taken with Derek Jeter. Just really cool. Love it. Jack and I both love baseball, and I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about Gamecock baseball as the time comes, fall ball in the swing of that now, but as the season gets closer, we'll certainly talk about that. But more football to talk about here today. Let's kind of bring it back to Texas A&M, South Carolina, and just the vibes for the game right now. Like, we're sitting here on a Wednesday. It's October 30th. Happy early Halloween, by the way, to everybody out there. Have a great and safe day tomorrow, but we're getting ready for the weekend and already looking ahead to this Saturday night game. Your vibes, your feelings, just kind of how your overall just sensing this game will go, Jack.
I don't know, honestly, because Kendall,
you're still assessing.
Yeah, I haven't thought that far ahead to, like, I don't even know what I got going on tomorrow, but like, I haven't thought that far ahead to like how I see this game going. Like, I think South Carolina can definitely win this game, but there's certain things that have to go right. I think you have to win the battle in the trenches for one. Like, A&M is going to have they're great on both sides of the ball. Like, their D line is really solid and their offensive line is really good too. So that kind of is a double-edged sword for South Carolina because you're really good on defense, but you're kind of struggling on the offensive line. So how does that kind of play for the Gamecocks this weekend? But also, it's like, who's going to start quarterback? How are you going to stop the run? Like, that's number one priority in this game, in my opinion, regardless of who's playing quarterback, just because A&M runs the football really, really well. But for South Carolina, like, they just need to keep the momentum going. You have 2 weeks to prepare for this game. A&M's coming off a really massive win and probably one of their bigger wins in program history. And I don't know. I think South Carolina's got a good chance, but at the same time, this is not an accident that A&M is just good. Like, they are a very solid football team all around. They've beaten who they've played. Obviously, they lost to A&M week 1, but a lot has changed since then. And you can also argue that their schedule overall really hasn't been that tough. Like, yeah, they just beat LSU, but other than that, they've played Missouri, who really stinks right now, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Florida, Bowling Green, McNeese, like, really not impressive teams. Arkansas has been pretty solid this year. But other than that, like, A&M's kind of had it pretty good on the schedule. So I just feel like at night at Willie B, something has to give. And I see A&M dropping a game at some point before they get to the season finale against Texas. They go to Auburn on November 23rd. They get New Mexico State, and obviously this week they're playing Carolina. So I think they're going to drop one of these 2 road games, but I think it's going to be to South Carolina potentially, just because, again, we don't know what A&M is going to look like coming off of a big win with all the spotlight on them. Like, the pressure's not on South Carolina to win this game. As much as South Carolina needs a really season-defining type of win, A&M, can they keep it going? That is something that I don't know if they can. And just under the bright lights of Willie B at South Carolina, crazy things happen. We've seen it before.
Well, I think the big thing is that South Carolina, like you said, a season-defining win, and you feel like they've come so close multiple times, whether it was against Alabama, whether it was against LSU, South Carolina, with a couple of those games this season where you're just like, it was right there, it was on the tip of their fingers, and it just slipped away. So this would be a big-time win for South Carolina. But we talk about potentially seeing two quarterbacks this weekend with Texas A&M, the defense for South Carolina preparing for that. How much does that stress you out, Jack, that the defense is maybe having to prepare for two guys? And does it stress you out a little bit that it's not just one that they're focused on and you're trying to get ready for two? And it seems a little bit more chaotic that way. Do you feel that way as well?
It's definitely a little bit more stressful, I guess you could say, just because you don't necessarily know, like, hey, A&M's going to start Marcel Reed. You don't know that for sure. And even if he does start, let's say he's out there and doing well or whatever, maybe you ride with him. Same time, though, it wouldn't shock me if you put Connor Wegman in for specific packages or certain moments in the game. And I think it can be stressful, no doubt, especially with how uncertain it is how often they're going to be playing both quarterbacks for A&M. At the same time, though, like I said before, when I asked Clayton White about this today, they faced so many different quarterbacks this season. As I alluded to, you faced Nussmeier, you faced Milroe, you faced Brock Vandegrift, the two quarterbacks for Oklahoma as well. So you've had your fair share of different looks, and you've done relatively well in most cases. So I think at this point in the season, you kind of know, like, hey, we can stop the run. We can also stop the pass game. They can do a lot of different things against different quarterbacks. This is going to be an interesting and unique challenge because A&M's got two guys that can do completely different things. At the same time, though, I think South Carolina is ready for it. And so I think they've done a good job of keeping the stress down, it feels like, and not worrying too much, which I think really speaks to the confidence this defense has with the plays they've been able to make.
So Mike Elko was able to talk a little bit earlier on in the week about what he expects out of South Carolina. There's a whole article on that on GamecockCentral.com, kind of go through all of his talking points as well. But what do you think the main problem that South Carolina could pose to Texas A&M will be, outside of just the general answer of South Carolina has a really amazing defense, and that could be an issue for Texas A&M's offense?
I think it's kind of a similar thing to what A&M presents for South Carolina on offense. It's Lenore Sellers, who I think continues to play better as each game goes on. Like, his completion percentage has been a lot better. He's nearly completing 70% of his passes over the last few weeks, and he's been able to make some really nice throws. When he needs to scramble, he does it. He has taken a lot better care of the football, undoubtedly. It's a one-game sample size, but he's done a lot better in that standpoint. So I think it's a real positive that you're seeing Lenore's now, 8 games into the year this week, really playing some of his best football. And I feel like there's a lot of room to grow this season for him. So I feel like that is the number one challenge is, he's a dual threat guy, but at the same time, he's getting Jared Brown back this week. So that's another weapon for him. He's also got Rocket Sanders. So there's a lot of question, I guess, of what will Dowell Loggains have up his sleeve? Will they be throwing the football a lot? Will they try to beat A&M on the ground? Who knows? That's the beauty of this offense, is that I think it also helped them with that Oklahoma game that they didn't give away a ton of what they normally do, right? They didn't have to open up the whole playbook, right? They just kept it simple and did what they had to do and get out of there with a win, even though they definitely did struggle on sometimes at offense. But I think overall, A&M is going to have their hands full preparing for what Sellers can do, because they run the triple option as well. So there's a lot that they got to be ready for with him, and we'll see what happens.
So it's interesting there. You just brought up not opening up the playbook too much against Oklahoma, kind of keeping things a little bit more simple from an offensive standpoint. And we've talked about so many times this year opening up the playbook more, and that's something that we've wanted to see from this offense. So it kind of contradicts a little bit of what we've talked about earlier on in our GC Live shows throughout the season. So with this weekend, then do you want to see South Carolina come out and try to pull the same number that they did on Oklahoma and keep it a little bit more simple and see if it works? Or do you really want to see them come out like, let's get it, we're going to open the playbook from the jump, like explosive play, like we are not here to mess around? What approach should they be taking, in your opinion?
They got to do the second option there that you just brought up, Kendall. They have to be more explosive on offense. And think about what you did against Alabama, what you did against LSU, games that you lost really close. What did you do in those games? You played really well defensively, but you also played pretty darn good offensively outside of some mistakes you made. So I think that's what you want to see is you want to see an offense that comes out firing. You can't be playing from behind in this game. I think is a real underrated key. A&M, if they get a 14-0 lead or whatever early on, I think this game's pretty much on ice, unless South Carolina just makes a really nice comeback for whatever reason. But if you fall behind early, that puts a lot more pressure on the offense and thus creates more chances of having mistakes, turnovers, fumbles, whatever the case might be, putting the ball in harm's way. But for South Carolina, if they get out to an early lead here, the pressure's on A&M. And so I think what you'll want to see from South Carolina this week is just get off to a quick start. Basically, remember what they did against LSU on that first drive? It was the best drive of the season, probably by far. You just drove down LSU's throats. Get more of that. Mix it up offensively. Run the football when you need to. Get those guys going and let Sellers cook. I think that's definitely a recipe for success. Easier said than done, but I think for South Carolina, you have to be able to open up the playbook a little bit more on offense.
You ready for a night game, Jack?
Okay, so yes.
We've talked about this so many times.
Yes.
Covering it as a night game is a lot harder than viewing it as a night game, I will say.
Yeah. Okay. Yes and no. I'm ready for it. From the aspect of like for the fans and stuff, they deserve a night game. This is going to be a really sick atmosphere. ABC under the lights, nationally televised. Hopefully, an amazing crowd. Hopefully, a great game so everyone stays around the entire time. From a reporting standpoint, absolutely not. No, I look forward to watching football during the day and stuff, but I really despise having to stay up and be out till 1, 2 in the morning in some cases. And also, speaking of baseball earlier, if the World Series does go 7 games, I'm pretty much, we talked about this last week, I'm pretty much screwed because I'll be at the game while the World Series is going on, and I'll have it on my phone, of course, no doubt, but my focus has to be on my job, of course. So I'm really hoping this is a nice, good game. If the Yankees don't play they have to play on Saturday if they want to win the World Series. So I'll bite the bullet on that one. But from just a football standpoint, it's exciting for the fans. It stinks for reporters, but it is what it is. Hopefully it's a great game. And hey, anytime South Carolina wins, it makes everything a lot better. So I'll definitely take it if they win this game.
Would you consider this a must win for South Carolina? We don't like to use that term. Throwing around the term must win is not a fan favorite here on Gamecock Central because I personally don't appreciate the pressure that it puts on certain games, especially at this point in the season. And you look at the rest of the schedule, South Carolina needs to win 2 more games to become bowl eligible. But I think even a 6-win season at this point for South Carolina, I don't want to say that's a disappointment because making a bowl game is an accomplishment for sure. But I do think that people out there believe South Carolina can win 7. They can win 8 games. And I think that that's something that is possible for this Gamecock group. So what do you think? Is this one like a must win? Because I do think it really does set back the tone if you don't. Like if you don't, it kind of brings things back down. It's like, all right, we really got to really lock in to end off the season.
You would love to win this game. I'm not going to say it's a must win because everything is, hypothetically speaking, even if you lose this game, you could still easily get to 6 wins. You're going to beat Wofford. Then you have to find a way to win against Missouri or Vanderbilt. You should be able to win one of those 2. I'd be genuinely shocked if we're talking about South Carolina being 4-6 going into the Wofford game. I would be shocked if that's the case. I'm thinking more so 5 wins right now, maybe 6 already by that point. So yeah, you would definitely love to win this game, and I don't necessarily think it's a must win. But if you lose, it's like you said, Kendall, you're 4-4. The vibes feel a lot less happy, I guess. Like it's a lot more back to reality, I guess we could say. And the visions of going 9-3 and stuff and 8-4 feel a lot tougher. But I think it proves. If they win this weekend, it proves a lot of things. Number one, that Shane Beamer and South Carolina can actually win the big game, right? Because they faltered in the two big losses that they've had this year. And I'm not really even going to count Ole Miss because that team, South Carolina, just didn't show up to play. But in the games they did show up to play, they just couldn't finish. So if they can finish off this game and just beat A&M, it's like, hey, they finally unlocked the code to beating good teams and finishing games. If they do that, who knows what happens the rest of the year. So in some sense, yes, it's a must win. And I don't really like throwing around that term either. But at the same time, it's like you'd feel really, really good at 5-3 going to Vanderbilt, a team that you potentially should beat. We'll see what happens. But it makes everything a lot easier if you win this weekend.
Yeah. I don't even want to think about South Carolina going into Vanderbilt 4-4, losing to Texas A&M on the road at Vanderbilt, who has been so much better this season. Okay, then the next week you have Missouri at South Carolina. We've talked about it. Missouri, the kryptonite of the Gamecocks, just have been unable to beat them in years. Okay, then you're looking at Wofford, which is obviously, if you don't win that game, that's a whole other story that we would have to get into on another GC Live. And then you finish off the season with Clemson on the road at Clemson. This weekend also, I believe, is homecoming weekend.
I think it is because they do the Hall of Fame ceremonies on Friday. Homecoming should be Saturday. So, yeah, this is definitely going to be homecoming weekend for South Carolina. And you don't want to lose on homecoming. I mean, I don't really think homecoming is like that big of a deal.
Do you consider it homecoming for you?
Oh God!
You do homecoming every week.
I don't even understand because like in high school, like you had the homecoming dance and stuff. We never had that in high school. For football, we did homecoming, but like it's so different compared to like college homecoming. I don't even know what it truly is exactly. You know what I mean? Like other than alumni coming back, but I don't know.
I did my homecoming for the Ole Miss game, and to spare everyone of any further misery, I will not be coming back for homecoming this weekend. Maybe I was the bad luck charm. I don't know what's going on. I thought I was the good luck charm because when I was there last, South Carolina won last year against Mississippi State. And then, of course, the year before, I was at their amazing season where they beat Tennessee and Clemson. I was at all of those games. So I felt pretty bad about myself after that Ole Miss game when they came off of the bye week. So certainly hoping for some different results off of the bye week this upcoming weekend. Homecoming under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium. I feel like South Carolina always used to play night games. That was always my thing when I was covering the Gamecocks. Felt like they always played at night, whether it was at home, on the road. I think that's dwindled a little bit, but you talked about it. You know, you have that primetime slot on national, network ABC. You've got a great broadcast crew that's coming to do the game this weekend. So a chance for South Carolina to really, really make a huge statement. And in front of all of these recruits as well, we talked about it on the recruiting rundown, and we'll have more information on it as you watch it when it comes out tomorrow. But there are 4 guys that are coming this weekend on official visits that are not committed to South Carolina. So a couple of them are in-state guys, some guys that aren't. You have a ton of unofficial visitors that are coming as well. So a lot that rides on the success of this weekend for South Carolina, Jack.
Definitely. And a lot of people ask this question a lot that, if South Carolina loses set any week, honestly, like especially at home with a game like this, how does that impact recruiting? Does it hurt recruiting? Obviously it does. Anytime you lose a game, it definitely does. But at the same time, you get a win here. It's like the enthusiasm is already really high for South Carolina football, according to Shane Beamer and what we see on Twitter and stuff with recruiting and stuff, as you guys know. But if they win this game, it's like he's only going to raise the bar as if it's not high enough for what South Carolina football can be for years to come. The enthusiasm's only going to get higher, and that's such a great thing to look at. And you're right. I mean, look, there are going to be some recruits at this game this weekend that are not committed to South Carolina right now. Will that change? We'll see. We've seen over the last few weeks, like a Malik Clark, for instance, he was committed to Florida State for the longest time. And then, Florida State stinks right now, obviously. I'm not saying that's why he decommitted or whatever, but he eventually re-upped with South Carolina. And it's the same way with some of these other guys that have decided to come to Carolina. So, yeah, I like a win this weekend could be huge, not just for your season and getting to a bowl game for sure, but it's like you beat a top 10 team right now. You're not ruining A&M's playoff chances, but you're hurting them a little bit. Like it's not as easy as, A&M just needs to keep on rolling. Like they got to play their best football. So we're going to see what happens. It's going to be a really insane environment. I think the recruits are really going to love what they see on Saturday if they have or haven't been to Williams-Brice Stadium before.
Yeah, and the other point is, not just trying to get guys to come to South Carolina, but getting guys to stay and keep their commitment, because we've seen that South Carolina has been fantastic when it comes to flipping recruits. So South Carolina has been on the other end where you have guys that are committed to other schools. South Carolina is able to flip them. They commit to South Carolina. You don't want to be the team that is getting essentially the recruit that wants to leave and then go to another school. So yes, a lot of it rides on the game, how well South Carolina does, but the atmosphere as well. And I think being under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium, the LED light show, I'm sad I'm missing out on that, because that is next level at Willie B. When they implemented those lights, something changed, because that was... It is. It's very, very cool during Sandstorm, during what they do, before the fourth quarter. So it should be an exciting weekend, and we will keep you all updated on everything that you need to know regarding this game, regarding recruiting, regarding not just South Carolina football, but we've got other sports that are getting into their seasons here soon. Yep, men's basketball, women's basketball, of course. And then, like we said, we'll be talking about baseball more and more before we know it. So it's that exciting time of the year where you're really starting to hit crossover season. I don't know if you'd call it exciting, Jack, maybe more tiring than exciting. But for everyone that's tuning in and watching, it certainly is exciting. So we will keep you updated on everything. But any final thoughts before we get out of here, Jack?
No. Do you have any thoughts on how this game's going to go, or is that too early to say? What does your heart tell you, Kendall?
Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and guess that when I send you my picks, which I'll probably need to do that today, because one thing about me is the last couple of weeks I've been kind of bad about sending Jack my picks for the week. We don't just pick between whoever South Carolina is playing, but we also pick a bunch of other games that are happening that week. So I need to get on top of sending you that. But I think probably I will pick South Carolina to win this game.
It just feels
positivity can't hurt, and it kind of does feel like this is their time. Like they almost beat Alabama, they almost beat LSU. Like I feel like this is the breakthrough moment of this is your statement win.
Third time's the charm. Am I right? I don't know. Just something just screams
something.
South Carolina's going to get it done. If this game were on the road, I wouldn't give South Carolina much chance to go to Kyle Field and win. But hey, the A&M is playing really good football, but something's got to give. I just don't see them being that top team in the SEC. You know what I mean? Georgia, Texas, those are your top teams, and we'll see what happens. But this should be a really fun weekend.
We talk about the SEC night game, and it really is true, because Lane Kiffin had something to say about it earlier on in the week about LSU always getting night games and Ole Miss not getting very many night games. So, yeah, it is a thing, and it's something that the coaches notice. It's something that South Carolina has this weekend, which is obviously a massive perk. So, again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here on the show today. We're going to have more coming at you, plenty more about this game this weekend. But we hope that you all have a super happy Halloween. Stay safe out there. Have some fun. And if you're going to the game this weekend, if you're going to Columbia, be safe. Have fun. If not, have a great weekend, everybody. We appreciate you joining us here on GC Live. For Jack Veltri, I'm Kendall Smith, and we'll see you all next Wednesday.